Hi, everyone. Welcome to part 3 of episode 6 of the CLAT podcast, brought to you by Target Success. If this is the first episode you're watching, my name is Janardhan Pashupati. I'll be your host for these episodes. Uh, I was lucky enough to get ranked 38 in the CLAT back in the day in 2013 and go to National Law School of India University. And I've had the privilege of mentoring hundreds of students over the past couple of years in the CLAT cracking process. Here we have if you've been following us, if you've been watching the first parts of this episode, we've had a lot of fun and we'll continue to do that. But really we're going to get down to brass tacks, get down to tactics and some really important discussion for prep and for the exam in this part of the episode. So we have with us Aravind Krishna, who got rank 165 this year in the CLAT, Hemaang Gupta, who got rank 5, and Viraj, who got rank 50. So one area that we were just talking about right before we started recording and it's a very, very interesting and good question that needs to be answered by the CLAT coaching industry, the consortium, and has a huge impact on students. Is the CLAT a coachable exam? Is the CLAT something you can actually prepare for? And there are literally thousands of people out there with ranks, unfortunately is the right word, who have ranked 30,000, 50,000, 54,000, etc. Who at this point who have put in money, time, effort, and many of them, and who may feel like everything is Bhagwan. So I really want to get into that discussion. So Aravind and Hemaang had different perspectives on this, and Viraj especially has an interesting journey in that context. So so if you guys want to dive into it, go for it.
Yeah.
So why don't
Sure. So should I?
Because
go for it.
He has the take that he's taking the negative position.
Yeah, so basically, I think CLAT is learnable, but to an extent. So, like before I start, I will say this that fundamentally, CLAT is a bit of an elitist exam because English isn't a language that is accessible to most of the country. So, a good crop of people who could have been good lawyers or who could have been that argumentative, but just not in English, are automatically weeded out by the system itself. So, that's the reason you have like 16 lakh kids, 15 lakh kids appearing for JEE, whereas for CLAT the number barely touches 60,000. So, this sometimes it can feel like this exam is a measure of your competence in English rather than, a measure of your ability to, quickly understand texts and go through them. So if you're acquainted with a language from a young age, like fortunately I was, so it certainly does help a lot in the process of prep because you don't have to have that added burden of, learning English from scratch with respect to a lot of things. Of course, there's people, who don't have English speaking backgrounds and they still do really well on the exam, but it does make the process significantly harder. With that being said, an English speaking background isn't like a necessary condition or sine non qua for doing well in the examination itself. And there's still certain tips and tricks or certain fallacies that you can fall into while attempting the exam itself. Because at least for me, one of the best things about the process of prep was that it basically taught me that Hemang, a lot of the ways in which you're thinking are wrong. There's faltu ke assumptions in a lot of places where there shouldn't be those. And, maybe you just need to think about the process of thinking a lot more. So in that sense, the exam makes you think a lot, and making yourself think like that is a process that can be trained. It's thinking critically. You have to get into that habit, and soon enough, it will come naturally to you, right? And other than that, there's the pattern of the paper itself. Just so that you're not thrown off on the day of the exam, you have to acquaint yourself with the pattern as well. You need to know, acha, there's like 100 reading questions, there's like 35 GK questions. This is the manner that I could go about it in. Maybe I should take this much time to read, this much time to answer questions. So it's just nitty-gritties like that you can only sift through once you've actually prepared for the exam or you've gotten into the process of prep. From there, it's fairly simple. It's sort of formulaic, but not exactly. You do have to tweak your approach here and there a little bit, but still over a period of time, if your efforts are consistent enough, you might be able to go from maybe a 50 or a 60 in my case to a good rank in this examination. But again, having an English background, it certainly helps a lot for an exam like this, which is, a personal qualm that I have with the way that it's structured.
Absolutely. And I think I think you'll have this qualm for decades in a sense, because that's true of the legal profession as well.
Exactly.
it's a very elitist in the Indian context profession. Yeah, and
Right.
I mean, to some degree it's true across geographies, but definitely in the case of India. Yeah,
Like basically for all countries that borrow from common law tradition. So
yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
India especially is a very linguistically diverse country, and like your legal acumen is not something I feel that can be quantified by
Yes,
your aptitude in English as a
yeah,
language, because
exactly.
that is only a means to legal practice. English is
absolutely.
only a language or a medium, and that shouldn't be the be all end all of your legal your acumen, right? And that I feel like is a very sad indictment of meritocracy, but that's a whole other discussion. And I on the other side of this, I personally am not going to have as coherent of an argument as Hemang did, and I also agree with him in a lot of aspects. But I feel like preparing for the CLAT, maybe this is like the PCM student in me talking, but as someone who's used to the pattern that
Yeah,
exams like JEE or NEET might follow, it's very different in the sense that see, when you talk about a JEE exam, right? There are very fixed number of topics, very set number of
there's a syllabus.
concepts. There's a syllabus, exactly. Is that fundamental difference is that there is a syllabus that you can follow. You can cover 100% and give the exam, and there's always a quantifiable improvement that you can make every single time you make a mistake, right?
based
If you
on
say,
your
okay,
based on your understanding of the syllabus, not the exam.
perf-
Exactly.
perfect,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So your syllabus, like you for example, when you give the JEE exam,
Correct.
you get a certain question wrong from chemistry. So
Electrochemistry.
let's say
Yeah.
some electrochemistry. Yeah, it's terrible. I hate electrochemistry.
Right.
So let's say I make a mistake there. The next thing I need to do is study electrochemistry,
Yeah.
and then I can sort that out, right? When it comes to CLAT, the paper, it's every single mock that you solve, or on the day of the exam, the questions that you get can be so varied and like different. It's not very easy to prepare yourself for the kind of question that's going to come. Now, like for example, the CR section. Let's say that has a very fixed number of, I'd say, model questions that can come. Let's say assumption,
Right.
inference, and like
Assumption.
if you're comfortable with these concepts,
Yeah.
you can answer. But let's say the legal section and the GK section,
Yeah.
it's so vast and varied in the sense that it's very difficult to prepare yourself for an exam if you have no background in that.
Yeah.
So when you talk about English, if you're from a non-English medium background, then learning a language entirely and all its intricacies, nuances, especially a language like English, which is, people call it the drunkard's language and things like that, right? It's very difficult to grasp the semantics of the language and be dexterous enough with it to give a good attempt in CLAT. Because in an exam like GE, right? If you're grinding for 24 hours a day for 2 months, you can positively make an IIT seat.
Yeah.
That is not true in any way for CLAT, and that was the point I was trying to make. I feel like coachable, not coachable, it depends on because
No,
the
it's
effort
fine.
is
It's fine. Take the position that you were. I mean, you be clear with your views. It's fine. Yeah.
right. Yeah, my view is that it's maybe it's not the dichotomy of coaching and not being able to
Right.
not coachable.
There's a
And
gradient, of course.
it's yeah, definitely that's a
Yeah.
gradient.
Yeah.
And it's more in the sense that preparing yourself, the way you prepare for the exam is fundamentally different, in that you have to be able to adapt to beat the test and not beat the syllabus as opposed to other
Yes.
exams.
Right.
I think that's my view.
Exactly. As we like to say, target success, and as I've come to realize after teaching hundreds of hours and mentoring so many students, is fundamentally it's a useless exercise in many ways, not entirely, but to prepare students for the subjects. Many CLAT coaching
Right.
institutes treat it like a JEE or a CAT type exam,
Right.
where you have subject classes. I was sitting in GK classes, being the teacher and being like, I don't know what to do. Like, shall we do the newspaper? I derived some first principles to teach students, like curiosity and contextualization of facts, and tried to make it fun with quizzes. But there was nothing to teach as a subject.
Right.
I couldn't get into the chemical formula for or the periodic table. There was no content in that way. And I know that the teachers, we would have this discussion where we're like, we'll do the sheet, but there's no there's no like lesson plan that I can make for this that makes sense, right? In a structured manner. So since you have so different stories in how you came to the CLAT and different approaches to this question as it is, so why don't we dive deeper into that? So Hemaang, why don't you tell us the real fight you had from 50 all the way to rank 5, and what was your final score? And so I think that would be really instructive to a lot of students who get really disheartened, especially in who get 30, 40 and don't see a path forward for themselves. Yeah.
So again, before I start, I'll just add on to a little something that Aravind had mentioned. So when he was talking about how JEE is, fundamentally different exam from CLAT, I just realized that, you could categorize these exams with respect to, one exam having a top-down approach and one exam having a bottom-up approach. So like JEE could be a form of the latter, where there's a definable syllabus and you work your way up from there. Whereas for CLAT, it's one unified exam, and then you have to break down. Yeah, exactly. You have to break down the moment into its parts and then, hone in on them, if that's even possible at all.
No, that makes
sense.
Yeah.
And as Aravind had said that if you're grinding for JEE, you can actually see quantifiable, measurable progress. Whereas for CLAT, it's a lot more gradual and it's a lot more long drawn out. It's very agonizing like that.
Yeah.
And after a certain point, it gets very, very, very frustrating.
Yeah. Also, someone called Viraj back. I promise to make more blue jokes.
So Viraj has some internet issues he had.
Yeah.
I figured.
Yeah, we've told.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be able to join again, but like we were trying to, there's some huge internet issue just So so continuing on that path. So because it got so frustrating, I think I left a good chunk of what I was doing right just because I could not see immediate results. And it wasn't even like the results I was seeking were exactly immediate. I was waiting for like a good 3-4 weeks before, seeing improvements. But I know had I persevered for like just a little while longer, I would have seen those results. And maybe in a more efficient manner than, the ways I ultimately ended up going with. So I will say this, that this exam is an exercise in frustration. You will tire yourself out to the bitter end. There's no question about it. So one thing that you need to keep in mind at all times is that you need to keep your composure. You need to, have your wits about you, because you will waste a lot more time worrying about the exam than actually studying for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, I didn't think of it till now, but that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Like being kind to yourself in the process of prep is literally one of the most important things that you can do. I'm not even trying to say it in a live, love way. I'm not trying to say it like that. It will harm your preparation. It
makes a
tangible
difference. It's a hard skill.
Exactly. It so does.
Yes.
Right. And you might think that,
No, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what I want to say is like giving credit to yourself is very important in preparing for this exam, because like Hemaang very rightfully said, it's very, very difficult to see measurable results, because especially like when 35 of the questions are from GK and it can literally come from anywhere. There is no it's so vast. Yeah. And like you could do exceptionally well in one, you could get like 120 in one mock, and then the next one you're getting 70s because you messed up.
And a lot of students really feel the pain of that.
That's very disheartening, and that can have a very adverse impact on your preparation, even in the long run. And I think we should learning how to stop that is very important.
I think we should talk for a minute about the support systems there, because
definitely
a tangible role in your success. So
absolutely. Having people
go for it.
So
I'm sorry, wait a second. Aravind, go for it.
Okay. Like my personally, like one thing I've noticed, I want to preface this by saying I did not have a study group of any kind, right? But like Hemaang, Sana, and like a lot of friends that I have did, and it's very clear the advantages that you have when you're in a study group, because like I really wish I had like a group like that with very like-minded people all working towards the same goal. And especially when you're all in that same kind of boat, same problems that you're facing, like the ones we just talked about, it's a lot easier to I don't know how to like lend credibility to the motivation that you get from them. Because let's say when your parents are telling you that you'll do better in your next one, but like when another fellow CLAT aspirant tells you it just means a little more. And I feel
they don't exactly have the same locus or the standing for making a qualified assessment of your progress.
No, you see a lot of this in law school with locus, and you're like, your parents के पास locus ही नहीं है. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I feel like that's definitely something to consider. And it's very evident in a lot of people, like a lot of friends of mine who were able to carry themselves throughout the CLAT exam prep, who had a lot of who had study groups and things like that. That's something I wanted to touch upon.
Right. So how did you find that? And obviously, I want to get into this in the meat of this with Hemaang, but how did you find? So what were your support systems?
So personally, okay, this might not be a very good, don't do as I say, not as I do kind of situation.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, my motivation was entirely the fact that ever since I wanted to do law, I was very prejudiced to NLS, and I didn't consider the option of not. I've been a resident in Bangalore. I didn't the prospect of moving and all these things factored into the fact that I was hell bent on getting the seat here.
Right.
And that was almost singularly my motivation to do well in this exam. And I mean, it panned out in the end, but I feel like if you are so prejudiced towards a college like this, every single thing that even the NLS management can say can throw you off, and it can mess with you.
Yeah.
And that's not a very healthy mindset to have. But I feel like if you use that to motivate yourself, it's not as bad as
it's not a bad motivator. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad motivator by any means. But let's say I didn't make it to NLS, I'd be so crushed right now. So that's not a very healthy,
It's not
it's sort of important to not be enamored by the college, but by the fact that you're looking to get a legal education.
Correct.
So now, wo kahan se ho rahi, that's a matter of secondary importance.
It definitely that's just a means of legal practice. At the end of the day, we all want to be good lawyers, right? Your college and your CLAT scores are just a means to that, and you need to learn to look at it like that. But all that's what motivated me. That's what I want to touch upon.
And that's true of a lot of Bangalore people and Hyderabad people, because we're so focused on NLS Nalsar, and it's devastating to many people's mental health when that doesn't happen. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, Hemaang. So let's get into the support system, and then let's use the coachable, not coachable question to get into prep.
Yeah. So with respect to the group thing, I think it made a very tangible and a very visible difference to my prep as soon as I, got associated with everyone else in the group. So I'm sure you know Dhwani, right? So yeah. Dhwani and I were in the same CL online batch. So we started talking. Then we met Sumedh, Sana, and I think Arya on Discord. Right. And I wasn't all that active on Discord, but in about May or April, I asked Dhwani to add me to their Instagram group, and I got added over there. And after that, I could actually see that my prep had a lot more of a structure. And I think there's mainly two things to it. One, because there's people who are prepping along with you. You can talk about prep with them. You can hash out where you're going wrong or where you're going right. And the second thing is the competition somehow suddenly becomes a lot more real, because you realize that this is not an island. There's actually other people who are doing this, and maybe, you need to be a little bit more serious about the way that you're going about it. So definitely. It adds that extra burst of motivation, and there's an actual group of people you can talk to who again have a better locus standi with respect to the prep itself. Right. And other than that, it's just fun to have people who are, suffering in the same manner as you and having fun about your suffering. Yeah. तुमको पता है कि CL का एक mock बहुत रद्दी था, so you can talk about the fact कि वो mock रद्दी था. You know that GK is stupid, so you can rant to each other about the fact that GK is stupid. You know that you're scared about not getting a good college, you can rant about that. So just having that presence around at almost all times, it's just such a help. I know for a fact that while I was attempting the paper now, there was this passage about Harun and the Sea of Stories, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as I read that passage, my mind immediately went to Dhwani, because I know for a fact that wo Salman Rushdie stan hai. Yeah. So just everything about your prep gets connected with a group of people. So it makes it a lot more real, and it makes it a lot more manageable. So I know for a fact that if I did not have this group of people, I would not have made it to NLS at all. So it makes a significant difference in that manner. Again, it's not essential, but it certainly helps a lot.
It definitely helps. Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So Hemaang, to put the question clear, simply, what did you do to get from 50 to 150?
Right. So the most important thing that I think you can do is just don't be your own enemy. Like that is the essence of my advice in that sense. And it is that when you look at CLAT, you need to think about two things. One is your accuracy and one your attempts, right? Like, of course, this goes for
Yes.
any entrance examination.
Yes.
So while you're starting out with your prep, you need to figure out where do I want to, maximize first? Do I want to maximize accuracy, due to which, of course, your attempts might take a hit? Or do I want to maximize my attempts, because of which, of course, accuracy will take a hit? So you need to pick your poison when you get into your prep. And after that, you can calibrate, of course. So when I started out with giving my mocks, I did not attempt GK at all. I did not attempt maths at all. And even among the reading sections, I would attempt the questions that I found nice.
Right.
So, हाँ, ये passage अच्छा है, I will attempt this. ये passage खराब है, I won't attempt this. And then I would crib about the fact कि मेरा 48 आया.
Correct. And I remember giving you this advice very clearly that don't get married to the passages. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that will ruin you.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And I can attest, I did the exact same thing that Hemaang did. It was just reading, and like I was like, in the last month, I was like, yeah, I need to study GK and math. Like that's a real thing.
Right.
And definitely, that's true.
Right.
But fortunately, I broke out of this habit really quickly. So I remember talking to this one senior of mine, and he told me, Hemang, just increase the number of your attempts dramatically and it will make a difference. And sure enough, it did. Like I went from 50 to 80 almost instantly. I did nothing else. I just increased the number of questions that I attempted. And of course, it would have commensurately increased my marks as well, right? But from that point on, it was an uphill battle, because going from 50 to 80 was a lot easier than going from like an 80 to 100.
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
like
So
it's this weird.
Yeah.
So basically it's this weird purgatory where you know why you're going wrong, but for some reason while you're attempting the mock, you can't figure out those exact patterns of thought.
Right.
So one thing that I will state again and again, that it's very important to be tenacious as hell when you're going with this, when you're doing CLAT prep. So with respect to me, the major areas of improvement were one, my reading sections, especially CR, and the second thing was GK and math. So math continued to be a problem area for me, like right up until the day of the examination. And like, we know how that panned out, right? But for the other sections, what I will say is that you need to go over your mistakes as many times as possible and in as much detail as possible. So I had this mock analysis notebook with me where I would, sort of write down the questions that I got wrong, and I would go over the questions that I got wrong, and I would write down short, brief explanations for why I got those wrong.
Yeah.
And for a section like CR, where I realized it was important for me to condense the passage into, identifiable chunks that I could then, keep in my memory while attempting the questions, I would also write small explanations of the entire passage, not going more than 3 or 4 lines.
Correct.
So that entire exercise ultimately helped me in the manner that it helped me organize information in an effective manner while I was giving my marks. And again, it was a hard road uphill, and it took a lot of time. And even compared to a lot of people that I was, comparing my mock scores to, my mock scores still weren't at par. Like, though my mock scores were a very poor indicator of what my actual CLAT score ended up being. So you just need to keep that in mind at all times, that mocks are literally just preparing you to, have your focus grounded for those 2 hours.
Yes.
And getting yourself into the habit of attempting questions as you go. So that is a very important thing that I need to remember. So for the most part, that was the way that I went about it. And one thing that I will, make very abundantly clear, please be regular with GK. Even though it doesn't have any fixed syllabus, it could be from anywhere, पिछले साल का आ गया, अगले साल का आ गया, does not matter. Even if you're reading the newspaper every day, which I did, try to make notes out of it. The newspaper is not useless like that. Don't focus it on it just for the editorials like I did. I just used to whiz through the news pages, glean information if I could, and focus primarily on the editorials, which makes sense, but it was very stupid in hindsight. Okay, newspaper mein actual mein dhanga news aata hai, so go through it. Try to make effective notes from it in the first place, because all the other news sites, you take GK Today, you take Drishti IS, they're also using the newspaper as the basis for their source.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So do those as well, but newspaper, it's your bread and butter.
Yeah.
So try to milk it to the best extent possible. And be very, very regular with your own GK notes. I'd say that, make them online in the first go. And then while you're revising it, like maybe at the end of the week, so make them handwritten, because, once you've effectively engaged with the information yourself, it's easier for you to, recapitulate, basically remember it again while you have to attend questions.
Yeah. So I think and we just have a couple of minutes left here on this recording at least. But I'd love to get back to you guys and we'll talk about that. Is that There was a very interesting discussion happening before on 2 points that I want to highlight. One is the thinking process and the paradigm shift was that you went through, especially Hemang, were the most important for your preparation. Like those made or broke it. And the second is that it's all about those 2 hours. So if you guys could just speak about that.
You can go ahead.
Sorry, could you come again? I didn't catch you the last part.
The second part was it's all about those 2 hours.
Oh yeah, so I could not agree with that more. So as much effort as you put in, and I will tell you something about mocks that I came to realize after I gave the exam. It's that instead of thinking of your mocks as mocks, like then as mock CLAT papers, I feel like it's much better to have a mindset that they're just tools to help you understand where you need to improve. Because if you start looking at the scores and if you start associating your caliber to those scores, and you kind of tunnel vision into a spiral and those mocks aren't as accurate as you might think, right? There's a lot of things different about the mocks than the paper, and that's definitely not a spiral you want to go down. So think of them as tools and use them effectively as tools, because you're getting a lot of information about yourself from the way you attempt your mocks, right? And that's something that I feel like you should utilize to the max, and that will definitely help you improve your scores. My scores in the starting were around 80 itself. I started very late, but like I used to solve old principal fact questions and things, so like I had a little bit of a grasp of how to answer some of them. With GK, what Hemang said is absolutely correct, and I'm going to add on in that while a lot of people consider the newspaper to be a source of GK exclusively, I feel like the newspaper is such a wholesome,
reading tool,
CLAT prep tool that people don't really realize, because it improves almost every single aspect except quant, of course. But like except for that, it improves everything about your the way you are.
And we'll talk. I'm sorry to cut you off, Aravind. We're just running out of time.
No worries.
So we'll get back to that for sure in the next edition of this episode.